And we're live. We're live, everybody. Welcome to Brainfood Live on Air. It's episode 327. This is a Brainfood Live special, folks. You might be aware it's not Friday, but it's actually Wednesday. But I wanted to do this midweek special because my co-pilot and my co-pilot today, Nathan Perot, had a really interesting conversation, number of interesting conversations about a topic which we both feel has been on the margins of the conversation in recruitment, but it's going to go into the mainstream because the more we see people use artificial intelligence, the more obvious it's going to have a tremendous impact on how people actually use search. And from there, how all of the websites, all of our philosophy on what a good website is or what a good digital presence might then be changed as a result of these huge user behavior trends. That's the topic of the day, folks. SEO for LLMs. What does talent attraction, talent acquisition, employer branding have to know in this era of AI? Okay, before we introduce Nathan, I just want to make sure sound checks, audio, visual, all that type of stuff is going okay. Folks, if you're watching this on Crowdcast, let me know in the chat whether you can hear me and see me okay here. Just comment on the comment thread there. You should be able to be familiar with this by now, but let me know whether you can hear and see Nathan and I okay. We should be broadcasting this live on a number of LinkedIns. My LinkedIn, certainly. So if you're watching this on my LinkedIn, do let me know in the comment thread there whether the audio and visual is fine. I do believe Nathan and others are also live streaming this. So if you are watching it on any of their channels also, do let me know whether you can hear and see us okay. Okay, cool. Thanks, Theo. Thank you, Emma. Good to know. Looks like everyone can hear and see us okay. Kept you off air long enough, as Nathan, so you might as well introduce yourself. Who are you? What it is you do, sir?
Thank you, Hung. Thanks for having me on. My name's Nathan Perrott, SVP Solutions Engineering at Radiancy. I've spent the last 25 years, quarter of a century is crazy, working with some of the world's biggest employers, helping them apply technology and digital marketing thinking to improve how they attract and hire talent. A lot's changed in that time, but nothing quite like the pace of change we're seeing right now, I can tell you. And in recent years, I've been paying close attention to how AI is shifting the rules again, especially around employer discoverability, candidate experience, and how TA tech stacks, content strategies, and people are all intersecting to shape the way that companies show up and in the talent market. And so today's topic is something that not just something I've been thinking about, but something that Radiancy's actively helping customers prepare for and respond to. And very quickly, for those who don't know Radiancy, we help large employers simplify hiring, reduce costs, and drive better outcomes, all through a single AI-powered platform. And that platform is called the Radiancy Talent Acquisition Cloud, which brings together everything from career sites, CRM, employee referrals, hiring events, and programmatic ad tech, all built with agentic intelligence throughout. And it's a real pleasure to be here today, Hung. Thanks for having me on, and I can't wait to get started in the discussion.
You, Nathan, actually stimulated this entire conversation because I remember reading a post that you wrote, might have been right at the beginning of the year or something, perhaps even end of last year, and it referred to this topic. And it was the first time anybody had put together, a cogent argument to say, you know what, this is going to actually really change a lot of the things that we thought we knew about the web. I wonder whether you could. Do you remember the article that you were referring to here?
Yeah, with a hastily put together acronym.
It was horrible, wasn't it? The acronym was longer than a normal word.
Yeah, but, exactly.
I wonder whether you could tell us a bit about that article. Like, what prompted you to actually get into sort of understand that this was important, and what was the I guess the main thread of that article?
Yeah, I mean, look, the reality was we've seen a huge amount changing when it comes to employer visibility and discoverability. And traditionally, we focused a lot on SEO, optimizing for search engines, rankings, and clicks, specifically to career site content, as well as jobs. Jobs very important, of course, but the career site content from an employer brand perspective. And that's no longer enough. We're seeing a shift even from the early days of the emergence of ChatGPT, and I was working in the Radiancy Labs team at the time, so I had quite a bit of time to play around with these sorts of things. And we saw that there was this shift now to LLM optimization. And to clarify, when I say LLM, what we're talking about is large language models, the systems behind tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, Perplexity, and many others. And these models are trained on massive volumes of online content and data, and they generate responses in their conversations based on what they've absorbed and what they've learned. Now, an important piece we might want to come back to later is the time frame between LLM training and SEO updates, because they're not quite the same sort of speed. So how organizations are represented from an employer brand perspective, or not represented, as the case may be, in that training data matters now more than ever. And Google's own data shows something like a 30% drop in search clicks in 2025, because many users are getting their answers either directly from Google's AI overviews or from ChatGPT or from another tool. And so this shift really changes the game. It's no longer how do we rank in the search results. The new question is, how do we show up in the AI answer, or in the citation, or be part of the synthesized summary? And that's what we mean by LLMO, or large language model optimization. It's just critical for employer branding now. And if you're not part of the answer the model gives, you're not contributing to the brand narrative. So it's much bigger than web traffic. It's about visibility, relevance, accuracy, and narrative control in a world where AI is becoming one of the first stops for discovery and exploration.
The first and final stop, it seems, Nathan. I mean,
Maybe.
quick question to the audience here, folks. Like, have you changed the way you interact and discover information? Are you switching more to AI, your AI of choice, whether it is ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever it might be? And have you noticed your usage of search engines decline? It certainly has for me. I've got to be honest. I mean, I can't remember the last time I actually pinged into Google to look for anything per se. I've tried to get the information via an AI first, and it's only when I struggle with it do I then try and dig in a little bit more. It's just I don't know. I think I'm mentally fatigued by plowing through the ads. I'm mentally fatigued by getting a lot of irrelevant results. I'm actually fatigued about the SEO stuff, because a lot of search engine optimization has kind of damaged the user experience of a searcher, because you're getting a lot of sponsor stuff, or you're getting a lot of content that's been not paid for, but it's been engineered to appear in the search, and you think that's actually not what I wanted. And so AI seems to have temporarily, at least, been a slightly better response. But yeah, obviously we need to be conscious of these behavior changes. Anyway, Nath, I think you put together some research on this, and just to outline a little bit more, because this is technically complicated. So I asked Nathan to just maybe support us with some visual aids here. Hope no one's feeling like disrespected, but I do think we need to look at stuff rather than just me and him when we're talking about this. So I think you've got some slides to show us, haven't you, Nath?
Yeah, let me just share a couple of slides. Like you said, it's a lot easier sometimes visually to share some of this stuff than hopefully everyone can see that. So I'll show some examples in a minute that will frame the discussion, and by all means we could be here all day looking at visuals of what has changed. But I think the first thing to talk about is how GenAI specifically has reshaped the candidate journey and how people discover and research employers in the first place. It used to be that candidates primarily would go to Google and type something like marketing jobs London or best finance firms to work for. And now they're asking AI tools things like, who's good to work for in marketing in London, and what's the culture like at insert employer name here. And these start conversational questions and chains between candidates and the bots. And the answers don't just come from your career site anymore. They come from how you're represented across the wider web, and how AI models have interpreted your brand, which is influenced by third parties, employees, past employees, people who have a perception of your organization based on their experiences, whether they're first-hand experiences or not. And so large language models are becoming top of funnel influencers, for want of a better term, since they're aggregating and synthesizing these views and they can shape perceptions before a candidate even sees your job or your website. And that's a massive shift. And it means that the first impression isn't always happening on your career site, and it's happening in an AI generated answer as well. And sometimes in tandem, candidates will be looking at both. We've got research that shows that career sites still are one of the most trusted sources of information. But candidates are not just going in a very linear route, which has been a trend over time for a long time. And it's very easy to think, based on everything I've just said, that career sites don't matter. Actually, the opposite is true. And why is that? Well, it's because the GenAI tools are pulling answers from all over the web, and that includes structured content on your career site, as well as social channels and sometimes employer review sites. But here's the thing: your career site isn't just for candidates anymore. You need to create content that's going to help train these large language models, and sometimes that might mean that the content isn't as all singing and all dancing, but just really well structured informational content. And you need to provide trust signals and in-depth answers and clear page structure, content that's going to help answer candidates' questions and manage their expectations correctly, because we all know that there's a lot of inaccurate information out there about employers, whether it's reviews, salary overviews, and a lot of that content is at the mercy of third parties these days. So the real question for employers, TA teams, employer brand professionals is, do you observe that narrative, or do you actively participate in shaping it? And very quickly, to show you some examples.
Hang on, Niv, before you get on. I just wanted to a thought just occurred to me. I want to just share with you in the crowd. It immediately strikes me that what employer branding folks need to do is to really have a thick and dense career sort of digital footprint, because you want as much of your own sort of content on your own domain as much as possible, because AI, when it does crawl this information, it will trust the whole sort of domain more than anything else. Not to say it's true, but at least it will say this is what the employer thinks is true. It's important that it's not a sparse page. You can't have just a few throwaways or to point it to another third-party platform as you described. You can't say, "Oh, check out our employer page on Glassdoor or something." Yes, you must have a Glassdoor page there, but you need to have your own domain. You got to really times 10x that, and make sure that's really thick, dense with the quality stuff that AI likes.
Yeah, you do. You're right, but you also need to extend the career site, as we think of it historically, to channels like TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Reddit. I can see someone in the comments there saying Reddit is being often used. It is, I think it was February 24 that Google formed a formal partnership with Reddit to index a lot of their content and leverage that. And we see that pop up quite a lot. And, if you're not doing it already, you need to get on Reddit and Fishbowl and start looking at how your employer brand is represented in those forums, because there will be a lot of conversation from individuals around their experiences of working at your place of work, or what they know or perceive to be about. And these next few slides, and then I promise I'll not be sharing any more, just show a few screenshots of exactly the kind of things that we're talking about. Excuse me. So here is just an AI overview from Google. This same search term in very transparent form, if you conducted this search term on ChatGPT or Perplexity, you'll probably get a very different response and maybe even different citations. So, and even within Google itself, if you conducted this and maybe you put a question mark at the end, or you're logged into Google, you might see different things. One golden rule from me is never assume that everyone sees what you do in Google search or GenAI search, because there are a number of things that influencing it. But what we're talking about here are these citations on the right-hand side here, that are informing these AI overviews. And when we expand that, we can see that in this case, and I have permission from BDO to share this, we can see that, three quite sort of granular pieces of content are helping inform this high level overview and they're all owned and they're all coming from the careers site. And this isn't a branded search term, of course. But then as we expand these AI overview sources and citations, we can see that of the 9 that it's used, actually 5 of them are being used from the careers site. Now, when we compare that to something like Apple, and I hope nobody takes offense if you work for Apple, this is just one of the examples I wanted to pick. You can see that the same search term, what's it like to Apple, is actually one of the Reddit sources, as we saw just now. There's a whole thread on it, on the jobs thread. But when we click to show all, you see that actually Apple only really owns one of the entities here. I think it's one of 10 in this case. And we can see Reddit on a few of these. What's interesting, and this is something that Google hasn't nailed yet, in my opinion, and it is my opinion, is that it will still bring in quite old sort of overviews, reviews, or summaries. Quora being indexed here from 7 years ago, and you have to say, well, how relevant is that to this particular search term? I've seen older ones cited as well. And then very last example, when you click on the short videos, this case is BDO UK a good company to work for. We can see that of these 8 videos that are slightly above the fold, actually 8 of them are owned by BDO, but they're being indexed from third-party channels that BDO owns. So the importance of social content and video content specifically is really, really critical to extending that kind of ownership and control of the employer brand. And again, compare that to Apple, and it's quite different. Apple doesn't own any of those points of view or perspectives. They're all third-party perspectives hosted on those third-party channels. So, we've really got to start thinking about how we go below the surface of the water for the underneath the iceberg version of the content strategy now, and how we scale that. And that's one of the challenges that I think teams are going to face, is scaling content creation when you combine variables like occupation groups and skills that you're looking for, job titles, with locations, be that countries or cities, across global employers. That's quite an enormous amount of content that you might need to consider evaluating.
Really interesting. There's a few things here. I can already sense there's a paradigm shift in the purpose of creating this content. Pre-AI, you'd create the content and you just want loads of human eyeballs on that. Let's just distribute, make sure the human who's the primary person or the primary entity you wanted to see that would be the human directly. But now I'm thinking, no, yeah, of course you want the humans to see it, but actually more important is that it becomes a citation within the AI. So the AI sees it first, and then it becomes something that the human user would then use to validate. Folks, I mean, just a quick question to you guys. I mean, do you see the importance of this? How significant this is? A simple search where you say, "Oh, what's it like to work in?" I can imagine everyone will do that. Like most candidates going forward, especially ones that are more experienced or more advanced in the process, you're going to start trying to surface out that information. And whatever you see there is going to have such a strong impact in your entire psychology going through flow. And it's much trickier to get yourself into the training data than it was to rank on search engines, I would guess, because I don't think we know exactly how to get into the overview, do we? Like, do you know how the artificial intelligence sort of selects the citations, Nif? Have you got any inkling as to how that works?
I mean, there's small tactics I've been playing around with. So, for example, you might want to, when you create a content page, have the training data turned on for something like ChatGPT, and have it read it, review it, and make sure that it's learning from it. But I've got no hard evidence to show that works. But it's something that I've played around with. The golden rule, the absolute golden rule, is to build content for humans first, and make sure that you're answering questions and that you're answering candidates or managing candidates' expectations with content that's valuable in whatever capacity as part of their journey, and or whatever is important in correcting your narrative or your managing your employer brand. The second rule then is to make sure that that content is really well structured. And by that, we mean good page structure from a CM. When you're using your CMS, making sure your H1 headings are correct, making sure that the top, you have one page for the topic, that it's clear and obvious, easy to understand, kind of old school SEO tactics, really. And
I was
making
about to
sure,
say, I read Alexander Chukovsky, our good friend, and he mentioned this. He said, "Look, yes, you got to optimize for LLMs, but actually, a lot of the practice is just optimizing for SEO anyway. So even though you're not
exactly,
doing directly, but
yeah,
good practice for SEO should translate into good practice for LLMs.
yeah,
Not always, but those are good guides to follow." Yeah.
it does. And look, there are absolute tons of black hat SEO tactics out there to, you know, trick your way into getting content in search results or LLMs, and I'd stay well away from that. This is about good content and information, and correcting any narratives out there. And if you create good content and you structure it well, and it's got good schema or coding on it, which, you know, you apply to jobs, you apply to FAQs, you can apply to events or reviews, and that's the other thing. I think employers need to start thinking, or TA teams need to start thinking about what kind of content historically did we not really own on the career site. And so employer reviews, employee survey data, sentiment data, that kind of stuff's gold dust for career sites now, because having played around with ChatGPT to kind of try and understand what it will use a career site for and what it won't, that kind of employee review true sentiment, it tends to favor your Indeeds, Glassdoors, Comparably, PayScale, those sorts of channels. And so synthesizing employee reviews and thinking about a granular, you know, marketing jobs in London for the employer and building a page around that. What do our people say about working here? Some quotes, some testimonials, and that page being structured around marketing reviews in London at employer. Well, that's going to be really good content. Does it mean you're the only site that's going to be, or the only page that's going to be in the citations? No, but you're optimizing in for your opportunity to be in the consideration set, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, really, really good. Steve Levy, thank you so much for sharing some links in here. Folks, if you are watching this on Crowdcast, do check out those links. I haven't checked them myself, but they seem like it's relevant to topic. Steve Levy, by the way, he's on LinkedIn, obviously. So if you're watching this on LinkedIn, just follow him. I'm sure he'll be able to share those links through as well. I'm very, very interested to know, I think you're right about kind of another paradigm shift is that search engines traditionally loved historical content because the older something was, the more credible it was. So this is why the Quora thing emerges, because it's like probably still being linked to this day. So old Google thinks that's quality information. It's not thinking about recency at all. Whereas AI, you know, it's kind of, it needs to, it's metamorphosizing in a different way of producing this information, but it's still leaning on historical stuff, which may be well out of date. I don't know what that means for us. I mean, does it mean that we have to go back into all of those and like comment like crazy on historical things? I mean, what's the best practice for us here?
I mean, I would focus on creating content for the now and future, and then making sure it's updated, and, you know, going back through articles and comments of 2018 and trying to comment and correct it. I think it's probably a bit challenging, but using it as a research source to then answer the questions. So I can't remember what that Quora example was, but if you've got questions on and threads on Reddit that are being answered that you're not contributing to, create content, host that on your career site, distribute that content through your CRM, through your employee referrals or employee advocacy channel, get it on social in different formats, and slowly that you're starting to build the story, and then make sure it's kept updated, you know, as things change. Another really important piece of content, and I think it's something that employers, especially C-suite, tend to try and bury their head in the sand about, is salary transparency. You know, if you're creating content on, I'm going to use marketing in London again, because we've got to think about these two variables of occupation group, job family, job title, whatever it is, plus location. But you're creating content on, salary reviews at employer for marketing jobs in London, and you're owning that content on your career site, then that's something that probably needs to be updated every year. It doesn't need to be anything more than, a grid of your salary ranges for the different levels of jobs. But that's an incredibly powerful signal to search engines, to AI, but also to candidates. It's one of the biggest frustrations that still hasn't fully been dealt with. And I know why corporates have challenges around that, but the reality is that information's out there, whether it's correct or incorrect, on TikTok, on Glassdoor, and synthesized in AI reviews. So you need to contribute to trying to own that narrative around salary reviews, and it's great content for the large language models.
Yeah, it's going to be helpful for those companies that have kind of embraced salary transparency and just the general, a leveling of a system and so on. It's going to help it's just almost an excuse for more content to be churned into the system. And the language model is going to like that. By the way, on Reddit, I don't know if you saw this, Nathan. I forget where it was, but it was something like Reddit was so dominant on how LLMs were sorting information. I thought, you know what, this is a nightmare for TA because Reddit is tech orientated, and it always has been one of those places that, this is, I think, where the engineers themselves who are creating the technologies, who are creating the AI, their bias is coming in because they dominate a Reddit, and Reddit is the dominant source for how these large language models are trained. You know what? This is terrifying territory for TA and HR, who I don't think are natively on Reddit at all. I think they're terrified of the space.
It's like a hidden world, and there's so much. You can pretty much find a thread on anything on Reddit, but also Fishbowl. I remember I created a pay transparency guide in 2022, just as some of the new laws were emerging, and part of my research took me into Fishbowl, and I found these huge communities of people in HR talking about salaries at their employers, which was quite ironic, but this discussion's happening out there, and it's kind of below the surface. So you've got to get out there, and you've got to play around with some of these searches around salaries and reviews, and what's it like to work at employer, and what's the culture like, and start digging deeper into these sources to audit what your presence is like, and you'll probably find some skeletons in the closet, and that helps then inform where you need to focus your efforts. I can see a question there in the chat around finding out what people are searching on AI. The best way is to get into it yourself, in my opinion, and start looking at the different sources and the different spin-off questions and avenues you can go down. That can get overwhelming if you can go down a rabbit hole, to use a terrible phrase, but there are tools out there. There's an abundance of AI monitoring tools that will help you see brand mention and brand impression. Some of them probably better than others. Some of them cost more than others. It tends to be all the old SEO tools that did the keyword and visibility and brand mention research that have sort of emerged. They've just evolved into AI tools. So Ahrefs, SEMrush, Am I on AI is another one. So there's lots of tools out there that we've got an evaluation we've done of some of those. So I'm happy to chat to anyone about those. But before you get into all of that, just have a play around, get into ChatGPT, Perplexity, Google AI overviews, obviously, and just see what's coming up around those things that are around working at your company, working in a particular department. If you've got a particular challenge with a team, skill set, occupation group, job title in a particular location, just focus on that and see what's being said, see what the internet thinks of working at your organization, and that might help give you some areas to focus on, because it can be overwhelming if you think you can't create all the content you need for every job title and employment group and by location. It's just too much. You have to prioritize.
You know what? There's some uncomfortable realities we've got to talk about as well, Nif, in the sense that there's an unfairness that is clearly going to be not only emerge, but probably be strongly reinforced by all of this, because someone who's just spent a lot of time on the internet over the last 10, 15 years, who's produced an enormous exhaust of, digital exhaust or whatever, they're going to just have this huge advantage because there's so many bits of content about that person or that organization that's going to come up on a prompt on a chat GBT or similar. Whereas someone who's just young, coming into their career or whatever, or a new business you set up, there's simply nothing there, so it won't emerge, and that's unfair. However, it kind of tells me that that's an unfair hand, but you've got to play it as best you can. Like, there's never been a more important point to say you just got to put out content. You've got to talk and commentate about your professional life, because that's going to just keep feeding into the machine. Is that fair, or is it even a realistic thing to try and do? Like, in 2025, is it too late, let's say, for a recruiter? Let's say I'm setting up a recruitment business and I need, I'd love to be able to be recommended by ChatGPT. That's going to make a difference. Is it too late for me to just feature in that training data in some way? Like, what do I need to do to get in there?
No, not at all. I think, again, I still maintain that whilst we have to have an eye on optimizing for AI, we've still got to optimize for humans first. So we have to make sure that you're providing the information that your candidates, in our sense, need. Or if you are a recruitment staffing business, that you are creating enough content that at least gives you good foundations to build on. And for some, that might mean using GenAI to get you started on the content. Content has never been more important. We talked about content being king for years and years and years, probably as long as I've been in this business, but it's never been so important, and how you use that content. So yeah, I think just starting with where your priorities are and how you need to control that information is important. Now, I read different things around how often the LLMs are updated, from a few months to twice a year to new releases of the GPT models, but you've still got to optimize for SEO as well. SEO is a bit more real time. You create a landing page, get into Google Search Console and request it gets indexed. That usually happens within 24 hours, if not quicker. And that's how you can just start controlling the narrative and contributing to it, and just finding areas, researching areas where maybe you have gaps. Are your candidates not as informed as they should be? Are there some common things? Are recruiters telling you that, our candidates need to know X, Y, and Z, so that I don't have to explain this to them, or I don't have to correct their opinions, or I don't have to sell that to them? You've got employee survey results that can help you. You've got candidate surveys, some of which we have on some of our customers' career sites, that helps candidates provide feedback around their motivations and their interests and their behaviors and the experience they're having and their perception of the employer brand. All of that data feeds straight into the content strategy and helps you then create that content that helps address what they're looking for. And we see that changing quite a lot. Candidate motivations of what they're looking for from employers changes very quickly. And in a world where EVPs are created, and they can take a bit of time, let's be honest, particularly where interviews with leadership, are influencing that. These sorts of these pulse survey type feedback, especially the career site feedback surveys, can help you adjust the messaging in the market as the economy and the labor market changes very quickly, to appeal to audiences, to then create that content that just maybe adjusts your EVP messaging and dials it up or down, or in a different direction. So you've got to kind of use these insight tools and channels that you have to be able to help influence, as well as the external research. Google searches, people also asked, dropping those down gives you a whole wealth of insights to help you. And there are tools out there to help you with that as well.
Yeah, really, really good. As we keep talking, Nathan, I'm kind of filled with hope in a strange way, because it seems to me that actually the demand for EB and talent attraction and recruitment marketing skills is going to increase, really, because well, we might be in a situation there where employers may not have a choice, because their brand is thoroughly. I wouldn't say they've lost control of the brand, but it's fair to say that their ability to control what people think about their brand has been eroded by the arrival of AI. And if you're going to surge any type of like capacity on your EB, now is the time, because you've got to
100%.
get all of this stuff into place. And I know a lot of people listen to this and thinking, "Oh man, content creation a nightmare." But one of the ways to think about this is to think about conversation rather than content, because content, quote unquote, with a big C, is like hard to do. It's like, oh my god, I got to produce write a blog, I got to do polish video or whatever. But if you think about it more in terms of just having conversations with the population you care about, actually, it's very easy to produce that stuff. You can do like a vox pop with a bunch of candidates or something. You could literally do an interview series with every employee and just get them to do 20 seconds on a video. There's loads of tools that allow people to layer on your brand values on top of video that an employee can use on their mobile phone. So stuff like that, I think, is probably something that could very quickly increase the density of the content that you have. That's also very authentic because it's sort of employee driven.
100%. And it doesn't even have to be. I mean, that is good content is good formats, and we know those formats work. But we also have to unthink as a community of people that it doesn't have to be fully polished. Informational, factual content is okay and actually quite important, and quite often the thing that's missing. Where do I go for my interview at this location? What extra benefits does a software engineering team in London get, because they might have benefits to choose their own tech and what have you. I go back to this sort of synthesizing external content. That's quite easy to do these days, especially with GenAI, as long as it's authentic. And you're taking maybe employer reviews and synthesizing those, and employee sentiment or survey results, and synthesizing that, and then making that externally available. That's what candidates want and need. And if you look at any of the top types of questions asked by any conversational assistant, chatbot on a career site, they're all very factual kind of hygiene questions. And so creating content around those sorts of things, the recruitment process, the application process, the interview process, all the timeframes, using those as insights to drive those questions. What are people feeding back on Glassdoor, and then addressing that? It can be quite simply questions and answer based, and that sort of structure, that question and answer based structure, is really powerful for SEO and for AIO.
Yeah, so there should be no excuse for not having sort of ideas on content. It seems to me that, again, the sort of companies that will do better are the ones that kind of inherently more transparent. If you are transparently talking about your culture anyway, that all of that is like digital exhaust that's going to be fed into these systems. Whereas you can imagine a more close business that very secretive, nothing is disclosed, all this type of stuff. There's going to be nothing there, and nothing there means someone else is going to fill the void. It's going to be that guy, disaffected employee on Reddit who's got too much time in his hands that's like blasting away. You know what I mean? So you've obviously you've got to overwhelm them. But one of the quickest ways to produce content that people want is to be more transparent, because you're not really producing content. You're just kind of just opening the door. It's like a restaurant. You know what I mean? Like the modern restaurant these days, the kitchen is available. You can see it. The people sitting down eating their food can see the food being prepared, and that's a form of entertainment. It's a form of keeping the people amused and increasing their UX of their entire journey. Whereas back in the past, you'd never see that. The first time you see the food is when it's plated and delivered to you. So I think there's a direct analogy there to recruitment. You've got to have an open kitchen philosophy, and that'll solve a lot of the LLM content problems, really. Jay's got a really interesting question here. I don't think we can, I'm not sure we're qualified to answer it, but I guess he's asking, let me just read it out. How does video content play into LLMs? It's a huge thing for social, but are or will LLMs be able to pull info from videos directly or their transcripts? And is it on all those channels? So in other words, I guess from an EB point of view, is video content even more important or less important, or we don't know?
Yeah, I mean, it's always been important, and I think from an engagement perspective and a speed of communicating message and the channels that have that consumption, like TikTok and Instagram, it's critical. Here's how I would do it. I would create that content and have that distributed on the channels like TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever the right channels are for your message. Host that content as a video on your career site. Host the transcript for that video on your career site, because that's good for accessibility and usability anyway, but it's also good for SEO and LLM. And now you've got on your career site a video asset, the transcript for it. There's all the text is on there, and that entire page is going to be about that story, whatever that is. Marketing, what's it really like to work in marketing in London for employer X? And now you own the kind of synthesized page, plus you've got your channels working hard for you out there from a reach and an engagement perspective. That's how to play it now. Undoubtedly, if not already, the LLMs will be leveraging that kind of content anyway. Most of them, from my own experience, seems to be that they need to turn it to text first before they can use that. So this way you're just expediting that process. But like I said, having the transcript on your career site page anyway is just good accessibility and good structured content best practice.
Yeah, and the kind of conversion of different formats of content into different things is actually one of the things AI is really good at doing.
Exactly.
And so I think recruitment marketers, as if you consider them as a category of marketing, which I do, then one of the things that marketers have been really good at is using AI for this purpose, basically converting a video into a blog, or a blog then into an audio or something like this. And basically we've got to do more of that and be very systematic with it. Particularly maybe in the most important sort of things that candidates might be looking for. As you say, culture, salary, whatever you think. You can survey your candidates or even monitor what they're saying in whatever chat bot you have on your website to figure out what the most important thing is. Just make sure you're fully fledged, multi-format, multi-channel responses to all of those things.
And you make a good point, that the career site is really the sort of central hub of your content strategy. Pretty much everything in some form or variety should go on there, because there's a number of opportunities that affords you. One, it allows you to be able to directly tie calls to action to that content page. So let's say it is a video about the day in the life of someone in the marketing team in London at employer, and you've got your transcript in your video. You're directly going to have your related marketing jobs next to it, your talent community registration, any events you're hosting right next to it. That content can be shared out by employees through employee referrals or advocacy app, whatever they're using. But also any AI that you're going to be using on your career site, like we have a career discovery agent that it combines natural language search and personalized results based on multiple different formats. You're pulling this into a sort of almost like a generative AI personalized page with all these different content formats and questions being answered, as well as a conversational assistant that's going to help deliver directly the answer that's pulling from all the content on the career site. So this is important for your own evolution of your TA tech stack, as well as the external AI tools that are needing your information to help with the learning and the conveying of your message in the landscape.
Yeah, really good point. I'm going to move on to a different idea, Nathan. And I'm actually think the audience might be thinking along the same lines. AI, one of the things that it can do is help you create a lot of content. But does AI like AI content? And we talk about is that even a good thing? Like, do we think eventually this will go wrong, in the sense that if we train artificial intelligence on artificial intelligence generated text, copy, video, are we just going to end up with just basically a degrading sort of level of quality, as it just kind of repeats these mistakes going forward? What's your view on this, from a technical point of view? Like, do we know how AI thinks of AI generated content, and what's best practice, would you say, right now?
It's interesting because I think there's a bit of fake news out there in this. So my first piece of advice would be, don't believe everything you read. I only this weekend I saw a post on Instagram, and this person was saying ChatGPT 5 now embeds watermarks on its content, and so here's how you get rid of these watermarks. And basically it wasn't watermarks, it was showing how in Google Docs you can show the spaces that have been put in there. And it was really just looking up the spaces, but they were trying to flog a sort of HTML cleaner. And so I did a bit of playing around with it, and it was nothing. So you have to really dig deeply to find what people are saying on social, or what people are advising that is new, or either watermarks, or it might be AI tools, recognizing AI tools because of repetitive words or what have you. And some of them are better than others, right? I've tested some of these tools with AI generated content and with my own content, and sometimes it gets it really accurate, human versus AI generated content. Sometimes it's got it wrong, which we learn from those lessons in every walks of life with AI. So I think the first thing is, don't believe everything you read about what AI does and doesn't do. You've got to do your own testing. But really, it comes down to the point of the content. What is that content designed to do? Now, for something super tactical like a location page, where you want to help the candidate understand estimated walking times from all the transport locations. So let's say, for example, customer's head office might be in Blackfriars in London, and you want to spin up a location page about where that is, good address, Google Maps location link, all the walking times from all the bus stops, train stations, underground stations, and even the ferries in London. AI can spin that up really quickly, quick validation of, is this accurate, with somebody that's local, and that's done. And that's like a hygiene piece of content that is good for candidates because it's helpful, it's straightforward, doesn't need branding because it's just an informational page, and it helps with AI tools both on the career site, because the AI tool is going to be able to use that information, but equally externally, it might use that in its learning model to tell you the estimated commute times between all the nearest stops. So that kind of is probably a good use. If you're using AI to create employee profiles, and maybe you're just integrating a few bullet points, you gotta make a call. Is this helping accelerate the content production exercise, or are you publishing that as non-authentic content? And I think there's going to be a line that you have to draw somewhere with the authenticity of it, because remember, this is about authenticity. And if an AI tool is thinking that you've used AI, well, then so might people. And so, yeah, I think just tread with caution as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, and I think people will. I think even if AI may not be doing so now, I think it will actually start kind of looking negatively at other AI generated content, because there's a trust problem there's a replication problem, inaccuracy problem, and there's good evidence, I think, already that human beings generally don't like it. If there's going to be like this thirst for authenticity, in my opinion, because there's going to be so much more AI generated, AI supported, AI supplemented content out there. Our eyes are going to glaze over. We're going to, we want to see the real
100%.
human. And so,
yeah.
As our behavior, yes, no, as we respond to the AI with our sort of feedback on it, that's crap or that's good, it's going to start recognizing we're voting down the AI generated responses.
Exactly.
And so theoretically, we should generally try and find a way to be as openly pro-human employee generated as possible. Nath, all this strikes me is that we're not going to be able to do it, mate, because it's like, let's not forget where we're at. Like TA, right? Our 5-year trajectory, 5-year journey. Probably we had a peak EB when it was war for talent. That was like probably just before COVID, and then we had a little peak maybe 2021 where everyone's like just build back better, and everyone, we were competing for the talent. But we've had 2 years worth of like too much talent, cutting back costs, chopping down teams, all the rest of it. It seems that the need to hire a top of funnel, the talent attraction side is receded. Therefore, EB teams have been chopped down. And I'm thinking, all right, now this has come along. And in fact, we need more of those staff back because we've got a totally different reason to actually have those resources in play. Right now, a skinny TA team with like really skinny EB resource, I'm not sure they can get there with this. How do you think this is going to play out? Are we going to see a re-expansion of capacity internally, or are we going to see more agencies step into play and provide that? Or is it like a platform like Radiancy going to just like, okay, we're going to, basically a turnkey it for you? Like, how do you see that kind of emerging?
Yeah, I mean, it's sorry, the rain is absolutely hammering down here. Sorry, sorry if you can hear that. Look, I think you're right. Everyone's having to do more with less, and I think TA is probably under the biggest pressure it's ever been under. I think first and foremost, helping C-suite understand the scale and gravity and importance of this is going to help get EB back on the radar if it's fallen off and budgets have been cut. I think second thing, yes, talk to your career site provider, tech partner, agency about how they can scale content for you. It's certainly something we're doing for our customers in light of this. And focus on where the biggest problems are. If you've got volume challenges, and how can you use content to help correct that narrative and focus on that? How can you create content that's going to help your recruiters stop having the same conversations and use that content to send to candidates in the process? There's every organization's different. We work with organizations that have almost a content marketing team within their EB team, and then in another team that there's sort of one TA that does pretty much everything. So you have to be realistic about what you can do in the time you have and the effort you have. But there are ways of creating scalable content that can make an impact.
Yeah, really good. Nave, just looking at the time here as well, just wonder whether as we sort of go through it, just a quick message to the rest of the audience. If you've got any questions for Nave and you want them asked, just pop them in the comments. I usually say go to the question and answer, but let's go to comments directly. We've been answering them directly there, so it makes sense to do that. So that's true whether you're on LinkedIn or anywhere else. I'm trying to monitor what's going on everywhere. So if you do have any questions on this issue, do comment away and let us know. On the other hand, have you got any sort of advice that people can use straight away? Like we need a takeaway. We need something. Okay, we've listened to this. This is great. How do I get my ship in order?
Let's ping one last slide up, and then people can take a screenshot of this or what have you. I like to have 10. So I think the first one here really is about understanding what you're trying to do. Are you trying to contribute or correct whatever's out there? Is it a visibility challenge? Don't try and boil the ocean. Just start where your biggest problems are and get support from your partners if you've got bandwidth issues. Audit your presence. Find out what your exposure is like, what the accuracy of information is like, and that will help you understand what the internet thinks around certain areas. The third is really around creating that content that answers real candidate questions and manages their expectations. So think human first, but optimize and structure for AI and SEO as well. Make your content work for branded and non-branded queries. So how can we be discovered for, software engineering roles in London if we're just a startup? Think about the thought leadership and content you can create that helps you become a thought leader or gets exposure. and empower your people. More importantly, to amplify your story as well as their own story. Whether that's through advocacy, using employee referral type apps to share content as well as jobs, really helping them expand the footprint in social. Career site's got to be your hub for everything, but how do you take that career site and the content out to other channels and expand that? And make sure that you're using the same AI type experiences like natural language search and conversational AI on your career site that candidates are using as part of their discovery process, because that will help them find better information easier and help to personalize the experience. I constantly prompt test stuff in GenAI, build prompts, create content, and then test how does that come out, and see if some of that's going to work on your career sites, particularly for that kind of informational content, where you just, it's basically around facts or FAQs and the like. And then leveraging those monitoring tools that I talked about earlier, that can help you just expand that, but just be cautious. Some of them do cost some money every month. And that's it, really. Obviously, if people want to connect with me on LinkedIn, please do. I love to talk about this kind of stuff, and be happy to hear everyone else's point of view as well, because this is a huge area and it spans multiple challenges, but it affects everyone right now.
Yeah, I think it affects everyone. Again, it gives me a little bit of hope. What we've got to do, folks, we actually got to take a lot of this content, a lot of this information, and educate sort of the business about the implications of this. Because it's important that they know that actually LLMs are being trained on Reddit. And essentially, people are using AI more than they are with search. That's an increasing trend, and they may just stop there. They're not revalidating. So if you've got like dodgy people sort of giving you sort of damaging your brand in places where you don't even sort of inhabit, you've got to find a way to fix that. And that means basically you got to invest in some solution. And I'm thinking the three things: got to beef up your EB team or beef up some sort of team. I can see a future where you might actually have employees dedicated to important channels. Like, it might make sense if you're an Apple, for instance. Do you not have like a small squad of people that are literally paid to be on Reddit? And they are natively just going in and interacting with people and just having conversations, but monitoring what's happening in the conversation. You should be. Any Fortune 500 business that has that's worth 2 or 3 bits of payroll to get that on there.
Yeah.
TikTok, same. You think about different places. LinkedIn, there was a very interesting comment. Apparently LinkedIn might be closing off sort of their content. I'm not sure whether that's true, folks, but probably, even if it's true or not, you probably need someone who's dedicated to have a look at what's being said, or having a counter narrative in those places. So I can see this happening. I do. I think this is going to be a future of work for some of us here. So exciting times, but the conversation has to be had internally. Otherwise, the business isn't gonna be aware of it. It hasn't got a clue. All right, good stuff. Let's leave it there, Nathan. Final thing. Radency are a turnkey solution for some of this. So whilst we're not trying to pitch any particular product, this, that, the other, I know a lot of companies are going to look at this and think, you know what, we're not going to recruit against this. We're not going to increase our capacity. We don't like the agencies out there. We actually want a product or a platform to help us with that. Can you give us some ideas how they find out more about residencies? Like where do they find? Did it come to you directly, or is there a place that they should inquire and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, best place is our website, residency.com. But feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to have a discussion initially, or point you in the right direction, and talk about your needs. Most importantly, we're also not just about creating content that creates branded experience for customers, but giving them the tools to be able to do it themselves. Whether that's the career site CMS, the referrals tool, the CRM, whatever it might be. So, happy to have a discussion and point you in the right direction.
Yeah, fantastic stuff, Nathan. And I know it's a very short, I think there's only 5 slides, but I think people might want to see that. So if you ever publish it, do let me know. And in fact, folks, do you want to get access to those slides? Let me know in the comments. We're going to collect together the people that say yes, they do. And then Nathan will, or one of Nathan's minions will send you those five
You'll be
slides.
me.
You have no minions. No,
No.
but you know what? It's stuff like that as a visual aid I think is useful, because I can imagine
Yeah.
an internal conversation where you're saying, "Oh, guys,
Yeah.
no one's going to have a clue." You send them
There's
those slides.
there's a few more slides that we didn't share today, so I'll package them up and we can share that for sure.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. All right, Nathan, let me let you go. We'll chat to you soon. I'll see you soon, hopefully, mate, and we'll connect.
Definitely.
All right, that's it. Welcome. Thank you, everyone, for watching Brainfood Live on Air special midweek. We're doing a couple of these, basically, where there's like really interesting stuff happening, either on the technology side or on the industry side. And instead of panel, we just go one-to-one with someone who knows something about it. Let me know whether this type of format is useful. It might just be a semi-permanent thing I do midweek every week. I know there's extra stuff that I've got to do, but I don't mind talking to you lot. It could be something we do on a semi-regular basis. All right, that's about it. We're back this Friday, Brainfood Live as normal time on the at 2 p.m. We've got another brilliant guest. It's another solo play with Sven Elbert of Fosway, Head of Analytics Services at Fosway. Sven does an annual survey. Hundreds of heads of talent complete the survey on how they're using technology, how they're allocating budget, how many people they're recruiting in their TA teams. It's going to be basically the state of the nation with regards to talent acquisition in 2025. It was the best talk, in my opinion, at RecFest that was 2 months or so ago. I've got Sven in basically to reprise that. You have to watch it. Follow me on LinkedIn if you're watching this. I broadcast that on LinkedIn. If you're watching this on Crowdcast, follow the channel on Crowdcast and you'll be updated as soon as we go live. And you can also register on the event, which is there as well. All right, that's it. Have a good day, everyone. Have a good week. I'll see you Friday.